I signed the closing papers without a photo or a toast. 15 years in the Air Force taught me to enjoy victories quietly. I wanted a door that locked, a roof that didn't leak, and a horizon I didn't have to share with a radio. The beach house on Isle of Palms fit, small from the street, solid structure, a short path to the water. I used a VA loan for part of it, and savings for the rest. No cosigner, no committee. Mine. The first day, I did basic checks. HVAC, breakers, outlets, smoke detectors, water heater, crawlspace vents. I wrote serial numbers in a notebook with the date. People think that's overkill. It's cheaper than surprises. I opened every window and let salt air push out whatever the last owners left behind. The house settled. So did I. I didn't retire. I separated. I still wake at 0530. I still make the bed tight. My perimeter now is a fence, gate latches, and slider locks. I walk it each morning, 5 minutes, no drama. Then coffee on the steps. Cheap beans, honest kettle, reliable view. I don't need more. The place needed small fixes. New photo sensor for the porch light. Different locks set for the sliders, because every door had the same key. A water pressure regulator because the showers had 2 settings, fire hose or mist. I did what I'm qualified to do and hired a licensed electrician for the panel. He pitched smart bulbs. I said I like switches. He laughed and said you can't hack a switch. Correct. 2 neighbors introduced themselves. A retired nurse who walks at 6 a.m. and waves without stopping. A fisherman who thinks everyone should fish. I told him I don't. He said I will. Maybe he's right. I also met the HOA president before she met me. She asked if I planned to short-term rent. I said no. She smiled like I passed a quiz. I built a simple file box. Deed, survey, insurance, utilities, permits. I kept the manuals the old owners left and wrote down every service phone number on one sheet. Organization looks boring until you need something fast. Boring is the point. Boring houses don't cost thousands at midnight. By day 4, the house felt like mine. Not because of decor. My framed items stayed in a closet. Commissioning photo, shadow box, a map. Ownership is knowing where shutoff valves are, which deckboard complains, and how far you can back in without scraping the bumper. I learned all of it. That's the moment a place becomes yours. I didn't tell family about the house. Not to be secretive. To keep noise out of a quiet plan. My sister Claire lives on noise. She posts reviews of salads. She says we when other people work. We grew up sharing a room. I learned to label my stuff. She learned that if she asked long enough, things moved to her side. We made it to adulthood with that system mostly intact. Do I have PTSD? I have a brain that still ranks sounds by threat. A slammed door gets my attention faster than a birthday reminder. I don't drink. I don't gamble. I don't ignore small problems until they become large ones. Call it whatever you want. I call it paying attention. On day 5, I jogged the beach at low tide, counted 6 off-leash dogs, and came back to rinse sand from my calves at the outdoor shower. I wiped down door hardware because salt eats everything and rebuilt the front deadbolt because it turned rough. I labeled spare keys and put one in a lockbox, then changed the code. If that sounds redundant, ask anyone who's ever left a key under a planter and then filed statements for a month. I made a grocery run with a list that reads like a mission plan. Eggs, milk, bread, produce, coffee filters, paper towels, light bulbs, AA batteries, WD-40, vinegar, bleach, a plunger, fuses, painter's tape. I don't need throw pillows. I need a plunger when I need a plunger. Back home, I dated bottle caps with a Sharpie. Vinegar cleans glass. Bleach does what bleach does. None of this is exciting. All of it works. I called the bank and set alerts. Transactions over a limit. New devices. New payees. 2-factor on everything. I installed cameras that record to local storage. If the internet goes down, they still write to a card. I prefer systems that don't panic when a router blinks. I also verified county noise ordinances and short-term rental rules. Not because I planned to test them, because people around you might. Lunch was a turkey sandwich eaten standing because the bar stools were a half-inch too tall to be comfortable. I'll fix that later. I ordered a basic house toolkit so the garage set can stay in the garage. I labeled the box House Do Not Wander. Tools wander if you let them. In the afternoon, I reviewed the property file line by line. The survey matched the stakes. Flood elevation was manageable with the right insurance. The roof had 5 decent years left with maintenance. I made a fall list. Gutters, sealant, check pilings, replace mailbox lock. I also wrote, call pest control, because palmetto bugs are a local fact I don't want to debate. At dusk, I walked the path to the water. The breeze kept the bugs honest. A kid downshore practiced on a boogie board and did not give up. I stood until the sand cooled through my shoes, then headed back. The porch light lagged 2 seconds, which is 2 seconds too long. I added photo sensor replace to the list. I like lists. They end arguments with yourself. Inside, my phone buzzed. Unknown number, local area code. Voicemail from a company selling turnkey short-term rental management. Delete, block, I don't rent. 10 minutes later, another buzz. This time a text from a contact saved as Claire, because Claire names herself. Big news, where are you? He typed, home. She typed, where is home? I looked at the question and set the phone down. I boiled water and made tea. I don't rush replies. The kettle clicked. I typed, South Carolina. She typed, wait, did you move? Call me. I typed, busy, later. I took my tea to the steps and shut off the flickering porch light at the switch. The ocean was steady behind everything. The house held its own sounds. The fridge cycling, a small tick in the hallway vent, the kettle cooling. I locked the sliders and checked the front door one more time because new locks deserve extra attention on the first week. My phone lit up again on the counter. Surprise, Claire wrote. We're close. The knock came before sunrise. 3 quick raps and 1 long one, her old pattern from when she'd forgotten her keys as a teenager. I froze halfway through pouring coffee, because nobody who matters knocks like that anymore. When I opened the door, Claire stood there in sunglasses, yoga pants, and confidence. Behind her, a line of cars filled my driveway like a parade no one invited. Morning, Captain Beach Life, she said, arms wide like we were on a talk show. You didn't answer your phone, so I figured we'd just surprise you. We. I counted faces. Her boyfriend, Tanner, who looked like a human protein shake. 2 friends I didn't recognize, unloading bags of groceries they didn't pay for. A woman in a floppy hat live streaming the driveway. A man dragging a cooler the size of a washing machine. I said, you drove 5 hours to surprise me? She laughed. Not just me. We needed a little escape. You're always saying I should see the ocean. Now I'm seeing it with my people. My people. She said it like she'd signed a lease. Claire, I said, this isn't an Airbnb. She rolled her eyes. Relax, it's family. And friends, we'll clean up, promise. You've got tons of space. Tanner flexed, probably by accident. Yo, this place is sick. You didn't tell me your sister's loaded. I'm not loaded, I said. I'm retired military. There's a difference. And from all. Claire pushed past me with her suitcase. Whatever you call it, it's gorgeous. Dibs on the master suite. She wasn't joking. By the time I followed her inside, the group had fanned out like a tactical team with 0 training. Tanner was testing the hot tub. The girl in the floppy hat was filming a morning beach vibe vlog from my deck. Someone asked for the Wi-Fi password before I could find my phone. I watched them spread into rooms, open the fridge, pop a bottle of rosé that wasn't theirs. Claire tossed her sandals by the door, announcing, You should have told me sooner. I could have helped decorate. It's furnished, I said. Barely. It needs energy. She spun like a weather vane, phone in hand, already filming herself. Day 1 of our coastal reset. Couldn't do this without my big sister, our hostess with the mostest. Vit. I stood there, half amused, half stunned, like a homeowner in a break-in who hasn't decided whether to call the cops or make sandwiches. Claire looked at me. You're cool with this, right? I wanted to say no, but my brain went military observe first, respond second. So I smiled the way you smile at a toddler with scissors. Sure, I said. Make yourselves at home. She squealed. I knew you'd understand. By mid-morning, every surface was covered. Wet towels, phone chargers, half-empty cups, beach gear, yoga mats. My calm little fortress looked like a lifestyle blog that exploded. Claire's crowd moved fast. They booked a sunset shoot on the beach, planned a wellness brunch, and blasted a playlist that made the glassware rattle. The fridge filled with oat milk and kale. My food disappeared. When I opened my cabinet, my coffee mug had been replaced by a mason jar labeled detox tea. At noon, Tanner yelled from the deck, "We'll grill tonight." "With what grill?" I asked. "The one out back. That grill's new. And it's mine." He grinned. "Then, it's perfect." Claire walked in wearing my sun hat. "You worry too much, Amy. You're supposed to be relaxing. This is good for you energy, community, love." "I like it." She laughed like quiet was a punchline. At some point, she mentioned she'd posted pictures of the house online. "People are obsessed." I tagged the location, hope that's okay. "It's not." "Don't be paranoid. It's free publicity. Maybe you can host retreats here. You could finally make some passive income." Passive income. That's influencer talk for use your stuff to fund my lifestyle. By late afternoon, the driveway looked like a small festival. More people arrived, locals Claire networked with at a coffee shop. I counted 11 total. I slipped out to the deck, closed the sliding door, and called Daniel, an old Air Force friend who'd gone into private security. "House full of civilians?" he asked. "More like uninvited guests." "Family?" "Worse. Family with ring lights." He laughed. "Need me to clear the AO?" "Not yet. Just running surveillance." "Copy that. Stay in command." I hung up as Claire appeared, holding 2 glasses of wine. "Truce?" she said. "Did we declare war?" "Come on. Don't be so serious. It's just a weekend. Everyone loves you." I looked at her tan, loud, self-assured, everything the Air Force beat out of me for good reason. I'm sure they do. That night, the Just a Weekend crowd set up string lights, played loud music, and toasted on my deck. Claire gave a speech about manifesting abundance. Tanner grilled steaks over flames too high for safety. Someone dropped a bottle that shattered near my new sliding door. I swept up the glass while they laughed. When the music died after midnight, I went upstairs because my bedroom wasn't mine anymore. Claire and Tanner were in the master suite, her laugh echoing through the vents. I lay in the guest room, the one with the smaller bed and no ocean view. At 3 a.m., I heard doors open, water running, laughter again. I thought about command checklists. Control what you can, monitor what you can't, wait for the right angle. By morning, I had one. I woke before the rest, made coffee, and walked the perimeter. 3 trash bags, 1 bent lounge chair, 2 cigarette butts in the sand, and a door left unlocked. Predictable. Claire came down mid-yawn, holding her phone. "We're gonna do sunrise yoga. You should join. Helps you let go of control." "I like control," I said. She grinned. "You'd love Tanner's workshop idea then, beach boot camp. He's thinking of doing a pop-up event here. People would pay good money." "Claire." I said her name once, just enough. She blinked. "What?" "This isn't a resort." She sighed dramatically. "God, Amy, you sound just like Mom. Mom paid her mortgage." That one landed. She scowled, then shrugged. "You're in a mood. We'll give you space." By space, she meant leaving for brunch and returning 4 hours later with more strangers. They carried yoga mats and coolers, all smiling like they'd rented the place. Claire called it a content day. I called Daniel again. He said, "Want me to drive down?" "Not yet, but start a background check. Claire Hayes and Tanner Ross. On it." By the second evening, they'd turned my deck into a studio. Cameras, ring lights, tripods, drones. The sound of waves was gone under the hum of portable speakers. Claire shouted instructions over music. "Smile, breathe, feel the energy of abundance." I felt the energy of trespassing. Inside, I found my grocery receipt in the trash, total $0. Venmo transfers between Claire's friends. They'd been charging people to attend. I sat at the counter, watching numbers climb on her live stream likes, comments, donations. She was making money using my name and address. When she walked in, glowing from attention, she said, "You should see the engagement. People think we own this place together." "Do we?" I asked. "Technically no, but, you know, family." I smiled. "Right, family." She laughed, thinking she'd won. Out the window, The sun hit the water in that sharp way it does before evening storms. I turned off my phone camera, the one pointed at the front door. From now on, I'd start recording everything properly. The morning started with the smell of cheap sunscreen and burnt coffee. I came downstairs to find 3 of Claire's guests lounging in my living room, wrapped in towels, scrolling through my streaming accounts like it was a hotel lobby. One of them looked up and said, "You got any oat milk?" Like it was a reasonable question to ask the homeowner they hadn't met before yesterday. Claire was outside, filming herself in front of my deck. "Welcome back, loves. Day 3 of our coastal retreat. Gratitude, sunshine, and sisterhood energy." Her voice hit that sing-song tone she used when she wanted to sound sincere. Tanner was behind the camera, shirtless, holding a smoothie bowl the size of a football. I poured my own coffee and said nothing. Silence has power. She hates silence. She noticed. "Amy, can you grab the mail? I think my Amazon order's here." "Your what?" "Just some supplies for the retreat." I stared at her. "You used my address?" She shrugged like it was nothing. "It's temporary." 2 boxes showed up that afternoon, ring lights, and branded yoga mats with her name printed on them. Claire Hayes Wellness. She filmed the unboxing like she'd just discovered electricity. By lunch, my pantry looked like a juice bar exploded. My olive oil was gone, replaced by coconut water. My rice was now too processed, so it had been tossed. Tanner grilled chicken on my new cast iron pan and left it in the sink, half submerged in grease water. I pulled Claire aside. "You said you'd clean." She blinked, confused. "We did. Look, the vibe's amazing. Everyone's loving it." "I don't care about the vibe. You've got 10 people living here without permission." Her smile froze. "Don't be dramatic. We're family. Family doesn't move in uninvited." She rolled her eyes. "God, you sound like a landlord." That's when I realized she'd stopped seeing me as her sister. To her, I was an obstacle. A boring, practical obstacle standing between her and her next live stream. That evening, Tanner knocked on the door to my guest room. "Yo, Claire says we're doing a group dinner. Can you Venmo her for your share of the groceries?" I stared at him. "My groceries." He shrugged. "Yeah, but we all ate, so..." I closed the door. At midnight, I couldn't sleep. I went downstairs for water and caught Claire in the kitchen whispering on speakerphone. "No, babe, trust me, it looks incredible on camera. Everyone thinks it's my property." "Yeah, my sister's just letting us stay, she's chill about it." She saw me and froze. "Oh hey, couldn't sleep?" I didn't answer. I looked at her phone, still lit up on the counter. The contact name read, "Brand Deal Sun Coast Retreats." That. I walked past her, opened the fridge, and saw my meal prep containers gone, replaced with green juices labeled Detox Day 1. She smiled like this was a normal Tuesday. "Don't worry," she said. "You'll get it when the brand goes live. Exposure's good for both of us." "Exposure?" I asked. "Yeah, I tagged you on everything. You're part of the story Air Force veteran finds peace through yoga. It's inspiring." My chest tightened. "You posted my house?" "Of course, it's great content." I walked out before I said something I couldn't take back. At 0500, I was already up. Old habits. I brewed coffee, turned off the Wi-Fi, and watched her panic unfold. 10 minutes later, she came running down the stairs, hair wild, holding her phone. "The Wi-Fi's dead. I have a sponsored post due at 6. "Maintenance window," I said. "Systems need rest too." She groaned. "You're impossible. Just disciplined." What? By noon, she'd regained access and was back online, but something in me had shifted. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger's inefficient. I'd moved into assessment mode. Step 1. Gather intel. I started recording small things. Photos of the crowd. Receipts left on counters. Screenshots of her wellness retreat page advertising 2-day stays for $450 per person. Location. Private coastal property, South Carolina. My property. Step 2. Document everything. I installed 2 small cameras, one at the front door, one over the deck under the excuse of security. I turned on motion notifications and stored everything offline. Step 3. Make allies. The mailman, friendly type, stopped by with a package. I asked if he'd noticed how many deliveries were coming in under my address. He laughed. Oh yeah, this house has been busy. You running a business now? Not exactly, I said. But thanks. Ah. That afternoon, Claire came bouncing in with a beach towel and a grin that said she'd monetize something. Big news, she chirped. We sold out the next retreat weekend. We? Tanner and I. I'm putting down a deposit for catering. With what money? She tilted her head, pretending to think. Technically, your card. My what? You left it in the drawer. I just used it for the reservation, obviously. I'll pay you back when the guests check in. I took a deep breath. Claire, cancel it. Too late. I smiled slowly. Then I guess it's time we go over some paperwork. Her face flickered just for a second, but she covered it fast. You're overreacting. Maybe, I said. Or maybe I just like knowing where my money goes. That night, her friends hosted what they called a community dinner. Translation: 30 people, music, spilled wine, and someone using my linen closet as a changing room. I stood at the edge of the deck, sipping water, watching the tide pull away from the sand. Tanner tried to hand me a beer. Loosen up, Captain. Rank retired, I said. Discipline isn't. Claire came over, glowing under string lights, camera in hand. You have to admit, this is beautiful. It was. She laughed like she didn't hear the past tense. When everyone finally left near 2 a.m, the deck was a war zone, trash everywhere. My grandmother's quilt used as a picnic blanket, candle wax hardened into the wood. I didn't clean it. I just stood there, steady, and made a mental list. In the Air Force, when someone crossed a line, you didn't yell. You wrote the report. Quiet, factual, final. I opened my laptop, made a folder labeled Operation Blue House, and started typing. Timestamp: 0217 hours. Subject: unauthorized occupancy, property misuse, potential financial fraud. Attachments: photos, screenshots, receipts. Objective: regain control of property without escalation. Under notes, I wrote one line. Do not warn the target. Let her build her own trap. At 0630, I was back at the coffee maker. Claire walked in, bleary-eyed, hair in a bun, wearing my sweatshirt. Hey, she mumbled. Don't freak out, but I may have told some of the guests they could stay an extra night. They're doing a sunrise shoot for the brand. Of course, I said calmly, because calm makes people underestimate you. She smiled, relieved. See? You're finally chill. She walked out to the deck, phone in hand, ready to tell the internet how generous her big sister was. Behind her, I reached for my phone, opened my encrypted storage app, and hit record. From that moment, the house stopped being her stage. It became evidence. The sound of laughter downstairs mixed with the hum of blenders and Bluetooth speakers. I sat in the guest room with my laptop open, a spreadsheet forming piece by piece. Date. Transaction. Witness. Evidence. The rhythm was steady order replacing chaos. I'd spent 15 years building supply chains under fire. Managing one entitled sister and her circus wasn't going to test my limits. Claire thought she was clever, using family as armor. That worked in childhood, not in a house with property insurance and a paper trail. I still had access to the security cameras, the bank alerts, and thanks to Tanner's complete lack of awareness, the email notifications on my shared Wi-Fi. Every receipt, every post, every comment they made from this house left a digital footprint. I started by calling Daniel. He answered before the second ring. Tell me you're not calling from a holding cell. Not yet, I said, but I need your help. Target? My sister. He whistled. Family op. Those are messy. Want. That's why I need it done right. Quiet, clean, documented. Say no more. By mid-afternoon, he'd sent me a list of background check packages. I picked the one labeled Corporate Deep Sweep. Claire's wellness brand was officially an LLC on paper, but it was dissolved for non-payment of taxes 6 months ago. Tanner, the self-titled entrepreneur, had a string of unpaid small claims in 3 states. They'd been living off appearance, not income. Perfect. Next, I called an old contact, Lila, a JAG attorney who'd left active duty and gone into private practice. We'd shared more MREs than I cared to count. Amelia Hayes, she said, recognizing my voice instantly. Tell me you're not getting divorced again. No, just cleaning house. That sounds more dangerous. What's the mission? I need to protect an asset, My sister's using it to run an unlicensed retreat business. I want it legal before she realizes I'm 3 steps ahead. Nino, you want to go official? Yes. I'm forming my own LLC, Palmetto Blue Retreats. Property management, event rentals, liability coverage, all under my control. I want everything in writing. Smart, she said. People like that only understand paperwork when it hits their wallet. Exactly. That night, I sat at the kitchen island while the crowd outside partied on the deck. I filled out state forms, EIN applications, and operating agreements. When I was done, Palmetto Blue Retreats LLC legally existed, listing me as the sole member and registered agent. The business address? The same as my home. The same one Claire was currently streaming from. It was like watching someone dance on a minefield you'd just mapped. The next morning, Claire was in full production mode. Okay, everyone. Yoga on the beach at 8, brunch at 10, photos at 12. Amy, can you grab more towels? I poured coffee. I'm not on staff. I6. She laughed, assuming it was a joke. Sure. Love your energy. I spent the morning quietly collecting signatures from her guests. Claire had posted a waiver template online for her retreat basic liability form. I printed it, added my LLC header, and asked everyone to sign for insurance. They didn't even read it. One guy asked if it included lunch. It did not. By noon, I had 12 signed documents acknowledging they were participants at a paid event managed by Palmetto Blue Retreats, LLC. That meant all liability damage, catering costs, cleanup, everything could be billed to the entity responsible. Claire. At lunch, Tanner swaggered in wearing one of my beach towels like a cape. Yo, Captain, you see the turnout? We're killing it. Define we. Come on, lighten up. Claire says you get stressed because you miscommand life. You should join the next class. Mindfulness, babe. I prefer control to mindfulness. He laughed, missing the point completely. That evening, I called Daniel again. You got what you need? He asked. Almost. I just need them to cross one more line. They always do. Yeah, I said. They just don't realize I'm drawing the map. At sunset, Claire gathered everyone on the deck for her big closing ceremony. Candles, speeches, music, the whole production. She stood there, radiant under string lights, thanking her supporters and family. She even pointed at me. My sister, Amelia, is the rock behind this retreat. Couldn't have done it without her. Applause, cameras flashing. I smiled for the photo. Evidence. After everyone went to bed, I opened my laptop again and sent Lila the signed waivers and screenshots of Claire's social media posts advertising paid attendance. She replied within the hour. Congratulations, Captain. You've just converted an illegal event into a taxable commercial activity under your LLC. Everything she did now generates income for you. Keep all receipts. I slept like a baby. The next day, Claire found me in the kitchen. Hey, small issue. The caterer says we owe $11,400 for the next retreat, but I told them we'd settle after the first one. I looked at her calmly. You already booked the next one? Well, yeah. We have momentum. The brand's growing fast. End quote. Under my roof. She hesitated. Our roof. I smiled. Claire, when you filled out those event forms yesterday, who did you think was listed as the managing entity? What? Palmetto Blue Retreats. You signed under my business. That means every invoice goes through me. She frowned. You tricked me? No. I gave you paperwork. You didn't read it. That's not a trick, that's a habit. Tanner walked in mid-conversation. Babe, what's going on? Apparently we work for her now. Claire snapped. He looked at me. That true? I shrugged. Legally, yes. And since you're part of the event staff, you'll need to submit tax forms before the next shoot. His jaw dropped. You serious? Deadly. Claire's face turned crimson. You can't do this. This was my vision. Then you should have gotten a permit. I left her standing there, speechless, and walked out to the deck. The sky was calm again. Seagulls circled low over the water, the air thick with salt and inevitability. I felt the kind of satisfaction only order can bring. By evening, I had Lila draft an invoice catering, cleanup, waste disposal, property use, totaling $11,400 addressed to Claire Hayes Wellness. Attention, unpaid balance. I printed 2 copies and left one on the counter under a magnet that said, "Home is where the quiet is." When Claire saw it, she laughed at first. Then she realized it wasn't a joke. "You're seriously billing me?" "Yes." "For what?" "For everything." Tanner tried to intervene, arms crossed. "You can't just charge family." "I can when family operates, without consent on private property. Look it up. South Carolina law. Commercial misuse of residential zoning." She blinked. "You wouldn't." "I already did." The silence that followed was the best sound I'd heard in days. That night, she called her so-called manager to complain. I overheard every word through the paper-thin walls. "She's being impossible. She's turning it into a business thing. I can't afford that invoice." Her voice broke on the last word. Downstairs, I added a new note to my Operation Blue House file. Subject now experiencing consequences. Maintain calm. Observe next move. Outside, the waves rolled against the shore, steady and patient. Revenge, when done right, isn't about fury. It's about letting gravity work quiet, consistent, inevitable. And gravity was on my side. The morning smelled like smoke and burnt ambition. I came downstairs to find Claire pacing barefoot across my kitchen floor, phone in one hand, panic in the other. Tanner sat at the counter scrolling through his messages, jaw tight, pretending to be calm. "They're demanding refunds," Claire hissed. "The caterer's threatening small claims court, and someone from the retreat posted a 1-star review saying the event host disappeared before dinner." End quote. I poured coffee and took the first sip like I was at a briefing. Sounds like poor leadership. She spun around. "You did this." "Technically, you did this," I said. "I just documented it." "God, you're so smug. You think you're better than everyone because you used to be in the military." "No," I said. "I think I'm better at reading contracts." Tanner muttered something about bad vibes and slipped outside. The truth was setting in. They'd built their brand on air, and now the air had bills attached. Claire was still talking words like unfair, family, stress. I let her finish before sliding the printed invoice across the counter again. The amount's due in 10 business days. After that, late fees apply. "You wouldn't dare." "I don't bluff, Claire. You know that." She glared, then grabbed her keys. "Fine, I'll get the money." I didn't ask how. I already knew it wouldn't come from her. 2 hours later, my phone buzzed with a call from Lila. "Congratulations, Captain," she said. "The payment portal for your LLC just logged a transfer $11,400 from someone named Claire Hayes." "She paid?" "For now. My guess is she borrowed it." "I'll make sure she gets a receipt," I said. "A legal one." That night, the house was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that means someone's planning something stupid. At 2 a.m., I woke to a light flicking on downstairs. Claire was in the living room, laptop open, typing furiously. I watched from the stairs, unseen. Her voice was low, sharp, the kind she used when she was desperate. "No, listen. I can handle this. She's unstable. PTSD or something. I can prove it. We just need her declared unfit, then everything reverts to me as next of kin." My stomach went cold. So that was the plan. When manipulation failed, she'd moved to character assassination. I went back upstairs and turned on the small recorder I kept from my deployment days, thin, silver, reliable. If Claire wanted a war of credibility, she'd pick the wrong opponent. The next morning she acted chipper. "I called a lawyer," she said between bites of avocado toast, "just to make sure you're not taking advantage of me." "Smart," I said. "I hope you kept the receipts." Her smile faltered. She didn't like when I stayed calm. That afternoon, I drove into town, stopped at the courthouse, and filed a formal business declaration notice public record that Palmetto Blue Retreats LLC owned and operated the property for rental purposes. Once stamped, it became part of the county ledger. Translation: Claire couldn't legally claim I was confused about ownership anymore. When I got back, the driveway was full again, different cars this time. Claire had called in reinforcements. Her so-called brand team had arrived. They wore matching pastel hoodies and spoke in hashtags. Tanner waved when I walked in. "Hey, boss lady. We're doing some crisis control." "Good. Start with the truth," Claire cut in. "They're helping me reframe the narrative. I just need to control the optics before you ruin my business." "Your business?" I asked. "You mean our business? The one under my LLC?" She froze. The team looked at each other, confused. "Wait," one of them said. "So this isn't your place?" Claire's jaw clenched. "Of course it is. Family property." I smiled. "Public records say otherwise. But go ahead, tell them the story." For the first time, she had nothing to say. That night, I got a text from Lila. "Your sister's lawyer just called me. They're threatening a competency hearing." Of course they were. It's the oldest trick in the book: paint the veteran as unstable, the paperwork as suspicious, the ownership as the result of confusion. I replied, "Let them try. I have recordings." At sunrise, the retreat team packed up and left. Tanner followed, leaving Claire behind, pacing, barefoot again, hair wild, muttering about betrayal. She'd lost her backup. I made breakfast: 2 eggs, black coffee, no small talk. Claire sat across from me, eyes red. "You think this is funny?" "No," I said. "It's predictable." "You don't understand. I built something here. You're ruining my future. You built it on someone else's foundation. It was never yours to begin with." "Use 6 to..." She slammed her cup down. "You're obsessed with control." I didn't argue. Control was survival. She called it obsession because she'd never had to live without it. Around noon, I got another call from the county clerk this time. "Miss Hayes, I'm confirming your business license for Palmetto Blue Retreats is active. You're good to go for short-term rental operations." "Perfect timing," I said. "I'll need that copy for court." "Court?" "Family matter. I-4. By evening, the house was back to half empty. Her friends gone, her followers offline. Just the two of us, like when we were kids. Only back then, I didn't lock my bedroom door. Claire stayed up late again, pacing. She didn't talk much, but her phone did. I heard fragments, lawyers, medical claims, mental health history. She was building a case against me. I went outside, sat on the steps, and called Daniel. "It's escalating," I said. He didn't sound surprised. "You expected anything less?" "I expected logic." "Family doesn't do logic," he said. "They do guilt. Keep your perimeter tight." I hung up, leaned back, and let the sound of the waves fill in the spaces where trust used to live. The next day, Claire's car was gone. She left a note on the counter. "You'll regret this." The handwriting was rushed, almost angry enough to rip the paper. I folded it, placed it in the Operation Blue House file, and labeled it Exhibit B. An hour later, Lila called. She filed for an emergency petition. Claims you're mentally unfit to manage finances and that she's acting in your best interest. "Good," I said. "Good?" "Yeah. That means she filed false statements, which means she just turned this from family drama into fraud." Lila exhaled through the phone. "You're terrifying when you're calm." "It's efficient." That afternoon, I scanned every piece of evidence into a folder. Emails, bank transfers, video clips, her late-night phone calls. The story told itself, one sister trying to take advantage of another and documenting her own downfall along the way. When night came, the tide was high, and the wind shook the windows. I locked every door, turned off the lights, and sat in silence with the hum of the fridge. The next morning, a white envelope slid under the door. Legal notice hearing scheduled in Charleston County Friday at 9 a.m. I laughed once, short and quiet. She'd gone all in. I set the letter beside my coffee mug, opened my laptop, and typed the next line in my log. Objective updated, prepare for counter-strike. Maintain calm. Proceed with precision. The sound of the surf outside was steady, unbroken. It didn't care who won. It just kept coming in, wave after wave. The courthouse was colder than I expected. Not temperature tone. You could tell who was guilty by who talked the most. Claire arrived 5 minutes late, dressed like she was going to brunch. Oversized sunglasses, flawless makeup, and a performance-ready frown. Tanner trailed behind, pretending to be her witness. I stood with my lawyer, Lila, who looked calm enough to nap. Claire spotted me and gasped loud enough for the clerk to look up. "You actually showed!" "It's a court summons," I said. "Not a family reunion." The hearing wasn't about money this time. Claire had filed a petition to question my mental capacity, claiming stress, PTSD, and erratic financial behavior. In short, she wanted me declared legally incompetent so she could gain conservatorship over my estate. She called it protecting her sister. When the judge entered, Claire's tone changed instantly. Gone was the influencer arrogance. Now she spoke softly, hands clasped, the image of a caring sibling. Your Honor, I love my sister dearly, but since she left the military, she struggled with judgment. I'm just trying to help. Lila leaned in. She rehearsed this. I know, I whispered. I've seen her rehearse fake compassion before. The judge looked over his glasses. Captain Hayes, is that correct? Yes, Your Honor. You understand your sister's petition? Fully. She's attempting to seize control of my assets by claiming I'm unfit. I have evidence to the contrary. Lila handed the clerk a file thicker than a phone book. Financial records, video evidence, business filings, medical evaluations, and signed affidavits confirming Miss Hayes's full capacity and independence. Claire's lawyer, a young man who clearly hadn't read the file, stammered. We, question the authenticity of these documents. Really? Lila said. Then perhaps you can explain why your client's name is on multiple invoices for unauthorized commercial use of my client's property? The color drained from his face. Claire shifted in her chair, eyes darting to Tanner for help. He suddenly found his shoes fascinating. The judge flipped through the documents. Miss Hayes, it appears your sister has been operating a business under this property without a permit or license. Claire's voice wavered. That's a misunderstanding. It was a family collaboration. Then why is there an $11,000 invoice billed to your personal account? No answer. The judge sighed. I see no evidence of mental incompetence. What I do see is potential fraud and misrepresentation. He turned to me. Captain Hayes, you're free to go. I suggest you consult your attorney regarding counterclaims. Already on it, Your Honor. We walked out to the parking lot. Claire followed, heels clicking like gunfire. You just humiliated me in front of a judge. No, I said. You did that yourself. This isn't over, she hissed. It is for today. She stormed off, calling someone before she even hit the car. Tanner tried to follow but hesitated. She's intense. Intense isn't the word I'd use, I said. But good luck. 2 days later, I got a voicemail from an unfamiliar number. Miss Hayes, this is Janet Torres from Adult Protective Services. We received a report of potential elder neglect and self-endangerment at your residence. We'll need to schedule a welfare check. I almost laughed. Claire had gone nuclear. When Janet arrived, she was polite, clipboard ready, tone cautious. We've had reports of unsafe living conditions and potential exploitation. I opened the door wide. Come in. I run a tight ship. She inspected everything, the kitchen, the pantry, the medicine cabinet, even the garage. You're remarkably organized, she said, sounding almost relieved. May I ask who helps you manage the property? I do, I said, though apparently someone thinks I shouldn't. Her eyes softened. These cases often come from family misunderstandings. This one comes from greed. She nodded like she'd heard that before. We'll close the report as unfounded. But for record keeping, could you tell me who filed it? My sister, I said, Claire Hayes. You might want to flag her name in your system. She has a pattern. Janet made a note, thanked me, and left. I stood on the porch watching her car disappear down the street, the air thick with salt and satisfaction. By sunset, I had new orders. No more reaction, only counteraction. I called Daniel first. She called apps on me. Of course she did. Desperation play. I'm escalating. I figured you would. What's the target? Reputation, finances, and credibility in that order. Ulbay. Daniel chuckled. Textbook Hayes. I'll pull the records on her brand and Tanner's business filings. You'll want these. Next, I called Lila. Time for phase 2, I said. She didn't ask what that meant. Restraining order? Already printed. I want to add elder abuse and harassment claims, based on the APS report, and the court petition. False statements under oath. Got it. I'll draft everything tonight. The following morning, I drove into town again. Filed the restraining order, the harassment report, and a civil complaint for attempted financial exploitation. The clerk recognized my name. Your sister again? Unfortunately. He stamped the documents. This should stop her. I doubt it, I said. But it'll slow her down. That afternoon, I came home to find a letter taped to my door. Handwritten. Familiar. You can't keep me out forever. Family means forgiveness. I folded it, slipped it into the Operation Blue House file under Evidence, Psychological Warfare. Claire wasn't dangerous, not physically, but she was reckless enough to weaponize emotion, and that's a threat you neutralize quietly. The next week passed in silence. Her kind of silence, not mine. Then the phone calls started again. Not from her directly, but from people she'd manipulated. A reporter, a wellness blogger, even a woman from a podcast called Toxic Ties. All wanted my side of the story. Claire was trying to bury me under social pressure. The problem for her was, I'd lived through worse storms, both literal and human. I didn't panic. I prepared. I drafted a simple press statement through Lila's office. Miss Hayes is a decorated veteran and licensed business owner. Any claims regarding her mental capacity or misconduct are false, defamatory, and under legal review. No hashtags, no drama, just a loaded sentence aimed at credibility. By the end of the week, her online posts shifted tone from confidence to victimhood. Toxic family, betrayal, gaslighting, the usual. The comments were half pity, half disbelief. Her followers didn't know what to think anymore. Tanner's account went private. Her business page disappeared. But I knew Claire. She'd rather burn than back down. That night, my phone buzzed again. A local number, voicemail left. Miss Hayes, this is Detective Rowe with Charleston PD. We've received multiple reports involving harassment and false claims originating from your address. Would you be available for a statement? I smiled. Finally. Because when the law starts calling you for your side of the story, it means the tide has officially turned. And tides, once they start to turn, never go back quietly. Detective Rowe's handshake was firm, the kind you learn from people who've dealt with every version of a family dispute. He wore a plain shirt, badge clipped at his belt, no judgment in his eyes. Captain Hayes, he said, we just need to clarify a few things about the complaints and counterclaims between you and your sister. Of course, I said, motioning him inside. Would you like coffee? It's strong enough to make paperwork sound interesting. He smiled. That might be the first good offer I've had all week. We sat at the kitchen island, my battlefield of choice. I slid a folder across to him, labeled Operation Blue House. Inside, bank transfers, property filings, screenshots, emails, and the false APS report. Every piece cross-referenced, dated, and highlighted. He flipped through the pages with the slow nod of someone who already suspected how it would end. You run this like a field operation, he said. Old habits, I replied. Order keeps things clean. Rowe asked a few standard questions, timeline, contact, witnesses. Then he leaned back, studying me the way cops do when they're looking for cracks. Your sister's been telling a different story, he said carefully. Claims you're paranoid. Says you've been recording her without consent. I recorded my own property, I said. South Carolina's a one-party consent state, and you're welcome to pull the footage. He nodded. Already did. She forgot that social media counts as evidence, too. He pulled out a printed screenshot from her last live stream, before everything fell apart. Claire, crying on camera, saying, My sister stole my business and my peace of mind. The comments below told a different story. Viewers questioning her lies, her missing invoices, her inconsistent timeline. She built her brand on emotion, I said. Problem is, emotion doesn't hold up in court. Rowe smiled faintly. You'd be surprised how often it's the downfall. He closed the folder and stood. We'll move forward with the fraud investigation. You may need to testify if it escalates. For now, keep your documentation secure. I've got backups, I said. He looked around once more, maybe expecting signs of chaos. But the house was quiet, spotless, steady. You're doing fine, Captain. Don't let this drag you into her storm. When he left, the air felt lighter. For the first time in weeks, no one was yelling, posting, or pretending. Just the sound of the ocean slipping in through the open window. That night I sent Daniel a message. Stage 2 complete. External confirmation achieved. He replied almost instantly, Copy that. Got something for you, credit history on Claire and Tanner. You'll want to see this. The file came encrypted, naturally. When I opened it, the pieces fit like a puzzle I already knew the shape of. Maxed out credit cards, defaulted loans, unpaid taxes. Tanner had even opened a business line of credit under Claire's wellness brand. listing her as guarantor. Debt stacked on debt, disguised under glossy photos of smoothies and sunsets. I called Lila. "They're broke," I said. "I figured," she replied. "You don't stage spiritual retreats when you're solvent. I want everything formalized, restraining order active, fraud report attached, debt records ready for submission." "Already drafted," she said. "Also, Detective Rose forwarding the APS false report for your civil suit. It's airtight." The next morning, my phone lit up with an unknown number. "Claire." "Against better judgment," I answered. "Are you happy now?" she said. Her voice was hoarse, almost brittle. "Define happy. You destroyed me. Tanner's gone. Sponsors dropped me. My followers think I'm insane." "I didn't destroy you," I said. "You did that yourself. I just stopped cleaning up after you." "Ah, you think you're so righteous," she hissed. "But you're just like Dad, cold, calculating, hiding behind discipline because you don't know how to love." That's an interesting accusation from someone who tried to have me declared incompetent. There was silence on the line, then a quiet sob. "You could have helped me." "I did," I said. "I just didn't help you lie." The line went dead. After that call, I didn't hear from her for a while, but her name still showed up: emails from collection agencies, letters from banks, messages forwarded by mutual friends asking, "What happened?" I didn't respond. The truth was already working its way through the system. A week later, Daniel drove down from Columbia. He showed up in his old Jeep, the one that still smelled faintly of jet fuel and bad decisions. "You look like you've been running ops again," he said. "Old reflexes," I said. We sat on the porch watching the surf. He handed me a file marked "Closure." Inside were printed credit alerts. Claire's accounts frozen, her LLC suspended, tax liens filed. The final financial collapse, neat and silent. "You sure you want this in writing?" he asked. "Most people prefer not to see the wreckage." "I prefer accuracy," I said. He nodded, then looked toward the horizon. "You think she'll bounce back?" "She always does," I said. "But maybe this time, she'll land somewhere honest." That night, I cooked for the first time in weeks. Something simple. The kind of meal that reminds you food isn't meant to be posted online. Just eaten quietly. Around midnight, headlights flashed across the driveway. I stepped to the window. Claire's car. She got out slowly. No entourage, no phone. Just her and a plastic grocery bag. I opened the door before she could knock. "I brought your mail," she said, holding it out like a peace offering. "That's not my mail," I said. She gave a weak laugh. "No, it's mine. The creditors sent it to your address again. Thought you'd want to see the mess you caused." I took the envelope unread. "You can fix it, Claire. You just have to stop pretending you're a victim." She looked up, eyes wet but steady. "I don't know how to stop pretending." "That's step one," I said. For a second, I almost saw the sister I grew up with, the one who used to beg me to tell her Air Force stories, who'd laugh when I taught her how to fold a bed so tight you could bounce a coin. But then she turned away. "You win," she said quietly. "This wasn't a game." "Everything's a game," she said, voice fading as she walked to her car. "You just play it better." Her taillights disappeared down the street. I stood there, holding the envelope, feeling the weight of every word left unsaid. Inside, the house was still. My laptop pinged with a new email: Detective Rowe again. Preliminary investigation results attached. Charges pending against Claire Hayes and Tanner Ross for fraud, false statements, and misuse of personal property. I closed the laptop without opening the file. The waves were louder now, like the tide had decided to clean the whole coastline. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just exhaled, steady and even, the way they teach you to before pulling a trigger, not for harm, but for precision. The horizon was dark, but the air was lighter than it had been in months. The mission wasn't over. It was just finally running on schedule. The air in Charleston County Courthouse felt cleaner the second time around. This wasn't defense anymore. It was offense. I'd spent months letting Claire throw noise at me: emotional, financial, legal. Now the tables had turned, and I was walking in with an organized strike. Not loud, not flashy, just inevitable. Lila was already at the table, files stacked like a wall of reason. "She's late again," she said without looking up. "She likes entrances," I said. "Let her have one last one." Claire did not disappoint. She swept in 10 minutes later wearing neutral tones, her influencer smile carefully calibrated to say, "I'm a victim, but make it fashionable." Tanner followed 2 steps behind, the loyal shadow who'd probably Googled courtroom etiquette on the drive over. The bailiff called the case. Lila stood first. "Your Honor, my client, Captain Amelia Hayes, is pursuing a restraining order, civil damages for financial exploitation, and a fraud complaint in connection with the misuse of her property and likeness for commercial gain." Claire's lawyer, new face this time, older, slicker, rose with forced calm. "Your Honor, my client acknowledges past misunderstandings but denies any intent to defraud. She was under the impression that her sister, Miss Hayes, had granted informal consent for joint use of the property." Lila didn't blink. "Then explain the signed waivers listing Palmetto Blue Retreats LLC, a registered business solely owned by my client as the managing entity." The lawyer hesitated. "We dispute the validity of those documents. Each contains your client's signature," Lila said, sliding the originals across the table. "Including this one, with her initials written next to a clause agreeing to financial responsibility for all event costs. $11,400 to be exact." The judge skimmed the papers, then looked at Claire. "Miss Hayes, did you sign these?" Claire shifted. "I thought they were for insurance." "Insurance against what?" "Accidents, maybe." Lila's tone was soft but sharp. "Accidents like charging guests for a retreat without a permit? Or using your sister's address to secure sponsorships?" The room went quiet. Even Tanner stopped fidgeting. The judge leaned back, unimpressed. "Miss Hayes, based on the evidence presented, financial records, video logs, and signed contracts, I'm issuing a restraining order effective immediately. You are to have no contact, direct or indirect, with your sister, her property, or her business. Furthermore, restitution in the amount of $11,400 is granted to Captain Hayes. The fraud investigation will proceed separately." Claire's face froze, that same smile cracking like glass. "She's doing this to ruin me," she said, voice trembling. "She's my sister." I met her eyes. "You stopped being my sister when you turned me into content." The gavel struck once. Clean. Final. Outside, the sun was too bright for courtroom emotions. I stood on the courthouse steps, breathing in the air that didn't belong to anyone. Lila joined me, tucking papers into her case. "You handled that like an officer." "It wasn't a battle," I said. "It was cleanup." She smiled. "You know, most people in family cases fall apart before this point. You're built different. I was trained different. When I got home, the porch light came on automatically, the new sensor I'd installed weeks ago. Simple systems, reliable outcomes, my kind of peace. Inside, I filed the court papers neatly in the Operation Blue House binder. Last section labeled resolution. Then I did something I hadn't done since the day she arrived. Opened every window. Salt air rolled through like a reset button. The house didn't feel like a fortress anymore. It felt like a home again. Later that evening, my phone buzzed unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something in the timing made me answer. "Captain Hayes?" a voice said. "This is Detective Rowe. Just wanted to let you know the DA's office is moving forward with the fraud charges. There's also a secondary identity theft count under review. Looks like she used your social security number on one of the vendor forms." I didn't even flinch. "Figurous. You want us to pursue it?" "Yes," I said. "If the system's finally working, let it work." He paused. "You don't sound angry." "I ran out of angry weeks ago. Now I'm just finishing the paperwork." Rowe chuckled softly. "I wish more people took revenge that way." "Revenge is messy," I said. "Accountability isn't." When the call ended, I sat on the porch steps, watching the sky shift into that soft orange haze that only coastal evenings can manage. The kind that reminds you time doesn't care about drama. The tide always resets the shore. A neighbor passed by Mrs. Graham, the retired nurse who walks every morning. She slowed when she saw me. "Haven't seen your sister around lately," she said, voice casual but curious. "She's gone," I said simply. Mrs. Graham nodded like that was the right answer. "Good. You keep this place peaceful, dear. Some folks don't understand quiet's worth protecting." "I do," I said. She smiled and kept walking. Inside, I brewed coffee, not out of habit, but because the smell meant calm. The counter was clear, the cabinets organized, the deck repaired where Tanner's friends had damaged it. The small things mattered again. Order was back. Around midnight, I got an email notification. It was from Claire. I almost deleted it unread, but curiosity won. The subject line said, "You got what you wanted." The message was short. I lost everything. The followers, the brand, the money. Tanner's gone. I hope you're proud. I stared at the words for a moment, then typed back, "I didn't want you to lose everything. I wanted you to stop taking what wasn't yours." I hit send, then archived the thread. That was the last message I ever sent her. Days passed, then weeks. The headlines in the local news briefly mentioned the investigation. Local influencer faces fraud allegations over wellness retreat scheme. No names beyond initials, but everyone who mattered knew. I didn't celebrate. There's no victory in family failure. But there is peace in boundaries held. One afternoon, while reorganizing my garage, I found the wooden sign Claire had ordered during her brand launch. It read the Hayes Sisters Retreat. The paint was chipped, the logo faded, but the irony was intact. I hung it over my workbench, not as decoration, as reminder. Outside, the sea breeze carried the same steady rhythm it always had, unbothered, consistent, indifferent to human noise. I leaned on the railing, coffee in hand, and let the quiet stretch long enough to feel honest again. The house creaked softly as the air shifted. No cameras, no laughter, no chaos, just the structure breathing like it was alive again. I thought about how easily people mistake silence for weakness. How Claire never understood that calm isn't surrender, it's control. And standing there, hearing the ocean settle under the dusk sky, I realized something simple but final. She'd spent her whole life chasing validation, and I'd spent mine earning peace. Only one of those things lasts. I turned off the porch light manually, not because I had to, but because I liked the act of ending the day on my own terms. The switch clicked, the room dimmed, and the sound of the waves took over again, constant, patient, absolute. The house was quiet again, the kind of quiet that felt earned. No music leaking through the walls, no clinking glasses on the deck, no chaos disguised as energy, just the sound of the tide breathing against the sand and the hum of the air conditioning cycling steady. I sat at the kitchen counter with a legal pad, the same kind I used to carry in the Air Force. The top line read, Phase 3, Rebuild with Purpose. It wasn't about revenge anymore. I'd already proven a point. What mattered now was using the silence for something that lasted. When I first bought the place, I'd imagined peace as isolation. Now I understood it was direction. Sitting still wasn't enough. You had to steer your stillness somewhere. So I started making calls, first to the local VA office, then to a few nonprofits I'd crossed paths with during my service. The plan was simple. Open the house twice a year for short retreats, small groups of women veterans dealing with transition, trauma, or burnout. No social media, no influencers, no brand deals. Just space, structure, and the sound of waves. The woman from the VA, her name was Teresa, sounded skeptical at first. "You're offering your home?" "Yes," I said, "but under my terms. Limited attendance, no cameras, no pity parties, just peace." She paused. "You might be exactly what we need." End quote. A week later, she came by to visit. Mid-40s, sharp eyes, voice steady like someone who'd seen too much nonsense to be impressed by anything. We walked the property together. She liked the accessibility, the layout, the way every room faced light. She didn't mention the old scars, faint marks on the deck rail from Claire's candles, or the dent in the fridge from Tanner's careless grip. But she saw them. Veterans always notice damage, even when it's polished over. "This could work," she said finally. "You'd need liability coverage, medical waivers, and an emergency plan. But you already run this place like a base." That's the idea. By the next month, Palmetto Blue Retreats had a new mission. I rewrote the LLC charter myself, dedicated to providing restorative stays for women of service. No sponsors, no ads, no profit margin. Just purpose. The first group arrived in early spring, 3 women, all with the same half-guarded posture I used to see in the mirror. One had left the Navy after an IED blast cost her hearing in one ear. Another was an Air Force mechanic turned teacher. The third, a Marine who spoke less and watched more. I didn't give speeches or lead sessions. I just gave them keys, directions to the beach, and a stocked kitchen. By day 2, they'd found their rhythm morning walks, shared meals, silent afternoons reading in the sunroom. One night, they cooked dinner for me. Nothing fancy, just pasta and laughter. The kind that sounds heavier than it should because it's been stored up too long. That night, I realized I'd built the home I'd been looking for all along. Not just for me, but for people who understood that peace isn't an escape, it's maintenance. The community noticed too. Mrs. Graham dropped off pies. For the ladies. The fisherman neighbor left fresh shrimp on the porch with a note that said, "For the troops." Even the HOA president, who once hovered like a drone over property lines, sent a thank you email for elevating the neighborhood's purpose. The irony wasn't lost on me. A year ago, this same house had been a stage for chaos. Now it was a refuge. One morning, while cleaning up after breakfast, I found an envelope by the gate. No return address, but the handwriting was familiar, curved, careful, trying too hard. Inside was a letter from Claire. "Amy, I don't expect forgiveness. I just want to say I understand now. I thought peace meant winning. I thought control meant freedom. Turns out, I never had either. I'm in counseling. They said accountability starts with writing to the people you hurt. I don't know what happens next, but I hope you're okay. I really do. Claire." There was no address, no number. Just that. I folded it once and slipped it into the same file that had once held evidence against her. Not to keep score, just to remember that even broken people can tell the truth once. Later that week, Teresa called again. "We've got a waiting list," she said. "You sure you want to keep this small?" "I'm sure," I said. "Peace doesn't scale." She laughed. "You're right, but you might want to give it a name. Something official. RD. I looked out the window toward the ocean, the water bright against the horizon. "It already has one," I said. "Palmetto Blue. It's not just a business anymore." Word spread quietly through emails, referrals, and whispered gratitude between women who'd learned the hard way that not all battles leave visible scars. Every few months, new guests came through, stayed a few days, left lighter. I never asked what they carried in. I just made sure they left carrying less. One of them, a young medic named Harper, left a note on the counter when she checked out. "This house feels like it used to hurt, but it doesn't anymore." That one line summed it all up better than anything I could have written myself. Life became simple again, but not small. I still jogged the beach at dawn, still checked locks out of habit, still wrote everything down. Structure was comfort, not control. The difference mattered. Every once in a while, I'd get curious and check Claire's name online. She'd gone quiet, deleted most of her accounts, scrubbed her old videos. A few blog posts still floated around, talking about lessons learned and healing through accountability. None mentioned me. That was fine. Some stories don't need retelling. One evening, Teresa called again. "We've been invited to speak at a local veterans fundraiser," she said. "Would you come?" I'm not much for stages. They just want a few words about why you started all this. I thought for a moment. "Tell them I got tired of reacting," I said. "So I built something worth defending instead." The line went quiet. Then she said softly, "That's one hell of a quote." By the end of that summer, the house had hosted its third retreat. The rhythm was steady. Arrivals, rest, laughter, departures. After each group left, I'd walk through every room, open the windows, and listen to the waves reset the air. One afternoon, Harper the medic sent a photo, her smiling in her new apartment, holding a key. The message read, "Finally got my own place. Thanks for showing me what safe feels like." I didn't respond right away. I just looked at the picture for a long time. Because that was the point, passing peace forward until it stops being rare. Outside, the sun dipped low, the sky blushing against the water. I brewed coffee, the kind of ritual that marks an ending without saying it out loud. The house stood calm, not empty. Every board, every wall carried history, but none of it was heavy anymore. I sat on the deck, pen in hand, writing one final line on my notepad. Mission complete doesn't mean it's over. It means it's working. Then I closed the pad, leaned back, and listened to the ocean, do what it's always done, erase the noise, one wave at a time. The morning light came through soft and gold, spilling over the ocean like it was starting fresh. I stood barefoot on the porch with coffee in hand, watching the waves roll against the sand in steady formation. For once, I didn't feel the instinct to measure, plan, or prepare. The house didn't need defending anymore. It was just home. A notification blinked on my phone, an email from the Patterson family. They'd stayed here months ago, part of the early veteran retreat pilot. The subject line read, "A special request." "Captain Hayes," the message said, "our daughter is getting married next spring. She wants to hold the ceremony where she first felt safe again, your beach house. Would you consider renting it to us for the weekend?" I smiled without thinking. I'd spent years fighting to protect this place. Now it was a backdrop for new beginnings. I replied simply, "Yes, the house is ready for her." I took another sip of coffee, the kind of long, slow breath that tells you the mission's complete but the work goes on. The quiet wasn't empty anymore, it was alive. The kitchen clock ticked softly. Somewhere, a gull cried. I could hear life happening around me instead of against me. The rental calendar filled quickly after that. Word spread quietly among veterans and their families. Weddings, reunions, small celebrations, all of them grounded in respect. No parches, no chaos, no drama. Just people who understood the value of space that had been earned the hard way. Every guest added something to the house. Flowers, books, stories. The kind of souvenirs that don't clutter, but remind you what peace looks like when it's shared. On a Tuesday afternoon, I got a call from Sarah Chen, my old lawyer. "You'll never believe who called me," she said, half laughing. "Claire?" Good guess. She wanted to confirm that the fraud charges were closed. She's trying to rebuild. Says she's moved to Asheville and is teaching yoga again quietly this time. "She's actually working?" Sarah chuckled. "That's what I said." She sounded tired, but different. "Different's good," I said, "as long as she leaves the ocean alone." "She mentioned you," Sarah added. "Said you turned her life upside down. But then she said it was probably the only thing that could have saved her from herself." I didn't answer right away. The words sank deep, but they didn't sting. "I hope she means it," I said finally. That night I found the old family photo buried in one of my desk drawers. The four of us at Myrtle Beach, Mom, Dad, Claire, and me. She was holding a kite, hair blowing wild, laughing like she owned the world. I traced the edge of the picture with my thumb before setting it on the mantel. The past didn't need erasing. It just needed context. Weeks later, the veteran retreat hosted its biggest group, yet 7 women, all branches represented. Marines, Army, Air Force, Navy, a mix of ages and stories. One of them, a young woman named Rosa, brought a service dog who refused to leave her side. On the last night, we built a fire pit on the sand. No speeches, no structure, just quiet. After a while, Rosa asked, "Captain, do you ever miss it? The uniform, the mission, the structure?" I stared into the flames. "Sometimes," I said. "But then, I remember the mission wasn't the job. It was the discipline to build something worth protecting. That never ends." They nodded. Nobody said much after that. The fire cracked, the waves hissed, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was waiting for anything. A few months later, I got another letter, this one official, embossed with the Department of Defense seal. It was from an old commanding officer. "Captain Hayes, word has reached us about your retreat program. On behalf of the Women Veterans Network, we'd like to recognize your contribution to post-service recovery initiatives. You've turned your experience into something that serves others. You make us proud. Lt. Col. Brian Carter." It wasn't a medal, but it meant more. Recognition not for combat or logistics or medals on a uniform, but for building peace after the noise. I framed the letter, hung it beside the entryway. Guests noticed it sometimes. Most just nodded quietly. Veterans understand gratitude without explanation. Every so often, I still caught myself glancing toward the driveway out of habit, half expecting to see Claire's SUV or Tanner's car. But the only vehicles that came now belonged to people who were invited. One morning, while cleaning the patio, I found a small package by the gate. No return address, but this time I recognized the handwriting instantly. Inside was a tiny wooden carving of a sea turtle. Smooth and simple, the kind you'd find at a roadside craft fair. A note was taped to it. Peace comes slow, but it comes. See. I stood there for a long moment, the ocean wind catching the paper just enough to make it flutter. I didn't cry, didn't smile. Just placed the carving on the porch rail where the light hit it. The waves kept their rhythm, indifferent but eternal. As the seasons passed, life fell into its new order. Mornings on the deck, afternoon maintenance, evening walks along the tide line. The quiet wasn't about solitude anymore, it was about rhythm. People often asked if I forgave my sister. The truth? Forgiveness wasn't a single act. It was a system, boundaries, accountability, time. She wasn't my enemy anymore, but she also wasn't my responsibility. One evening, after hosting a small dinner for the latest retreat group, I sat with Teresa on the deck watching the stars. "You ever think about selling this place?" she asked. "Once," I said. "But then I realized, peace isn't transferable." She laughed. "You're the calmest person I've ever met who's lived through hell." "Calm isn't who I am," I said. "It's what I fought for." When she left, I stayed outside, letting the night air settle around me. The ocean stretched endlessly in front of me, black and shimmering under the moonlight. Somewhere behind that horizon were all the years I'd spent surviving everyone else's noise. Now, every sound I heard, the creak of the deck, the distant gulls, the crash of waves, belonged to me. I took one last sip of coffee, cold now but perfect anyway, and looked toward the horizon as the first hint of dawn began to rise. The water shifted from black to silver, the sky bruised into gold. No endings, no beginnings, just balance. That's the thing about revenge, it never really satisfies you. But justice? Justice gives you back your time. And peace lets you use it well. The ocean kept rolling in, steady and endless, washing away everything that never deserved to stay.